What's up, ladies and gentlemen, how are you doing? It's Dan here from Cryo Noir again, continuing on this web series about my game making adventure. At the end of the last episode, things were looking pretty grim. I'd worked out it was going to take me 5 and a bit years just to make a semi-functional game, let alone a game that would actually be good enough for people to want to play without being forced to at gunpoint. Things were not looking good, and I was starting to really doubt the whole idea of just making a game, and then just sort of thinking, oh well, I've kind of just spent an awful lot of money on a real top-end gaming PC, so oh well, never mind. That was kind of it for a little while, not very long, but a little while. Like a lot of other people, I don't really watch television at all, I just watch YouTube. And if you do spend any time on YouTube and you follow sort of the gaming press and gaming industry, there's one name on here that you really can never fail to come across, and that's Yahtzee from Zero Punctuation. Judging by his sub count, not so many people know that he has a second channel, which is called Yahtzee19, and he's obviously getting more views than an awful lot of people out there, and certainly views that I'd kill for. But compared to his Zero Punctuation reviews, it's a much smaller channel. On there, he did a series called Ego Reviews, and I was sort of watching those, and I was just kind of blown away that this guy, who wasn't a game designer and never really professes to be like a professional game designer or anything, had so many games that he just knocked together in his spare time, and they were all very playable games. They all looked very interesting, they all had little unique ideas, and there was a couple of them that seemed to be quite good. I was like, how's he managed to do all this? I mean, he'd done very similar things to me when I was a kid, sort of fucking about with the Duke Nukem level editor and the Doom editor and all that kind of stuff. I only got further than I ever did with any of them, but that's effectively what I was doing, and he just seemed to have carried on progressing, whereas maybe I just got lazy and just carried on playing games, but he'd actually continued to do it. I was watching one of the videos that he'd done, which it was some sort of stealth, espionage, side-scrolling kind of game he'd done, and he was talking about, you know, that this was sort of his next real big step, and that he'd gone on and started using GameMaker. I'd come across GameMaker a couple of times, generally on sort of forums. Like on Facebook, I follow the Crytek developers and the Unreal developers and even the Unity developers' web pages, just out of morbid curiosity, just to see what everyone's getting up to and see the things that people are working on. And you would often hear GameMaker kind of mentioned in sort of sniggered tones, and people would kind of laugh and sort of say, oh, you can't make real games in that. If you want to make a real game, you need to be using one of these top-flight 3D engines. And they were sort of comparing it to like RPG Maker or some other hobbyist kind of thing where you just do drag and drop of icons together to get everything to work together. But my experience working with Unreal had been very much of a sort of drag and drop engine. Now, I'm not for 1 minute saying that Unreal is an entirely drag and drop engine. That would be an absolutely ludicrous thing to say. I mean, there's no way it would be the AAA powerhouse that it is if that was the case. But the fact was that all the tutorials I was coming across, all of the beginning ones were, here's how to use the blueprint and here's how to do, you know, build your first game using drag and drop. And then the next ones were all ridiculously complicated things about like how to program really in-depth AI, or how to reduce the amount of memory that was being used by your textures and all these kind of stuff. There never really seemed to be any kind of intermediate ones where it's like, oh, here's how to make your first game using nothing but code. I was really struggling to find that sort of stuff, let alone the whole issue of also having to then generate and make my own 3D assets. From what I could see, GameMaker seemed to be one where you could make all of your own assets and do all the coding all within the same engine. So I thought, well, let's have a look, let's jump in and see what we can do. Now, in the GameMaker kind of community, there are a couple of people that really sort of stood out to me fairly early on. One of those was Sean Spalding. Now, Sean Spalding's gone on to bigger and better things now. He actually works for Yo-Yo Games, the makers of GameMaker Studio, and he does tutorials for them now, rather than just for his own YouTube channel. So I started checking out some of his videos. One of the first videos on there was make your own version of Asteroid. So I thought, well, that might be a good laugh, I'll give it a go. It didn't seem to take too long, and I thought it could be good fun to do. Like always, there will be links in the description below so that you can find the tutorials for yourself. Also be a link to Yo-Yo Games' webpage, so if you like the look of GameMaker, you can download that and start fucking about with it like I did. And there'll also be links to Yahtzee's channel that I mentioned earlier on. And with that, away I went. So this is the Game Maker environment. In the centre you have sort of your desktop work area, and over the left you've got your asset tree. So we've got the backgrounds there that we've used, and at the top we've got some sprites, and at the bottom you've got objects, which these hold all the code for every individual thing, and then you assign a sprite to it later. This one was a drag and drop tutorial, but that's fine. I found lots that had sort of loads of code in it as well, but I thought for the first time we'll just use a drag and drop one. So if you launch the game up, you get a nice little flashcard, and away we go. Now you can see my ship is it's definitely not a rip-off of the Starship Enterprise, and it kind of floats along quite nicely. In the tutorial he actually just does the classic asteroid spaceship, which is just a triangle. I decided to do a slightly different one, and the background I just copied an image from NASA's website of some sort of nebula. I thought it looked quite cool. As you can see, when it moves, it's got momentum with it, so as you turn it will just keep rolling as well. And if you press space, we now have fire, and the faster you fire, the more lasers will come out. And again, there's no sound effects on this yet or anything like that, and obviously there's no asteroids for you to shoot, but it seems to be working quite well. The next step was to add some extra bits to it. So we've got some sounds here up on the resource tree. You can see we've also got an object spawner for the meteorites, and I've also added some sprites for those as well. We have like a large meteorite and a small meteorite, so that when you hit one of the larger ones it will break up into little meteorites. For the sound effects, I went to a website called bfxr.net. There'll be a link in the description below. That's a really cool place where you can download sort of royalty-free 8-bit sound effects, and you can also make them all yourself as well, and it'll sort of randomly generate them, and you can tweak them to however you want. I didn't spend a huge amount of time picking the ones for this. I just sort of grabbed some ones that seemed quite nice, but they're all royalty free, and you can just download them and use them as you please. It's a really cool website. So it seems to be working pretty well. You can sort of fly around and hit the meteorites. You can see in the top left hand corner, you can see that there's a score counting as well, and that will keep track of your score basically for all of the for every meteorite that you hit. And a big problem is that the spawn emitter will only generate more meteorites once all of them are dead. So you end up, kind of killing most of them, and you end up with maybe just one or two of the little ones kind of floating around. And because the screen wraps around itself, they'll disappear off screen and may take a minute or two before they come back on. And you're kind of left just floating in outer space waiting for a meteorite to turn up. I'll end up tweaking some more of some of the code there so that we can have a slightly different behaviour on the meteorites. We do have a fail state for it. If you get hit by a meteorite, you just die and respawn. It doesn't really, it doesn't do anything other than reset you. But it's the first part is in there, so that obviously needs tweaking. So I think now we'll just hit the sprite editor and we'll make some different looking meteorites. Okay, once they're all finished, then we get them added into the sprite list, and away we go. You can see I've added some pods here. Now each one of these is, you've got a pod for each side in the hull, and we've got the sprites there for that. And that's part of sort of a death animation. When you get hit, it'll spawn those two parts, and they'll go flying off into different directions. I've also added a game over screen as well. And for the meteorite spawner, I've made some adjustments to there, so that if at any point it gets below 5 of the large meteorites at any one time, then it'll just generate a further 6 of them on there. So that way you should have sort of a fairly constant stream of them, and at no point will you kind of run out. So once we launch it up, away we go. Okay, so you can see you flashing at the beginning. That's like an invincibility thing, so that, obviously once you've died, when you come back in, you won't just die immediately again by sort of spawning in a very unlucky position. You get a second or two of invincibility to get yourself out of trouble. As with all Asteroid games, it's generally easy to just stay in the middle and rotate in one spot and only move if you have to. But you can go flying around, and when you hit stuff, away they go, and they go spinning off as well. So it's all looking pretty good. I'm quite happy with the way it turned out. I don't think anyone's going to be handing over cash anytime soon, but I definitely think it's a lot closer to a finished article than the Endless Runner was, and not really, well, maybe a little bit more time, but you know, at least everything in this is made by me and completely from almost completely from scratch. With that, I'd like to say thanks a lot for watching. Don't forget to rate, comment and subscribe, it helps me out a bunch. And you can watch all the earlier episodes from my game making journey down below. I hope you join me next time for the next episode, and I'll see you then. Thanks a lot, bye!